You're listening to the Six Figure Designer Podcast, where we ditch the overwhelm, attract better clients, and build a business that fits your life without selling your soul or pretending to be an influencer. I'm Pam Durkin, a 30-year design veteran and creator of the Luxury Client Academy, and I help designers like you stop relying on luck or Instagram to fill your pipeline. Around here, we're all about referral systems, reputation building, and real relationships because you don't need more followers. You need the right people talking about you. Let's build a business you're proud of and make sure it pays you well. Let's get started. Well, hello, everyone. Do you guys remember that Mrs. Doubtfire movie? And if I'm dating myself, I'm sure I am. But if you haven't seen it, you need to go see it. But I'm feeling silly today as I get ready to record this episode. I'm so glad you decided to join me and talk about green flag clients. There is so much that goes around in our world where everyone talks about the red flag clients and the people to avoid. But I don't hear a lot about what should we be looking for. What are green flags that we should be picking up on? Words that potential clients are using as we're interviewing them, going through our discovery call process. What exactly is that? And honestly, in a world full of lots of negativity right now, I wanted to flip the script and talk about the positive, the things that we should be looking for, not the things we should be avoiding, but what we should be fiercely looking for when we're trying to get these better clients. Because if we can choose our clients carefully, this is an important key in reducing our stress and loving our businesses so much more. You're going to be avoiding those crazy headaches by trying to spot that alignment early. Now, is this a foolproof method? No, because people are people. And there are some people out there that can put on a really almost different personality when they're trying to work with you. And then once you're hired, they change. It happens. So I don't want you to be beating yourselves up over this and saying, how did I not see that? But the key here is to start noticing. Start noticing the traits and the values and the words that these wonderful clients are using with us. And let's learn from all of that. I want you to be writing down when you hear something, you're like, oh, that feels really good. I want you to be writing down those words and those phrases. Now, we're going to be going through a few of those and giving you tons of examples today, but it's just something to think about. Instead of trying to figure out and always looking for what's wrong with this client or potential client, what's wrong with them, and trying to talk ourselves out of doing business with them, what if we flip it and start looking for those wonderful traits, those phrases that make us go, oh, this could be incredible. So we want to learn what that great client behavior looks like so you can start saying yes with confidence. Now, I have several layers to my qualifying process. It's not just one phone call or one meeting and then we're ready to go. In my own design business, it first starts with an initial call, a very quick call. We call it the client audition in the Luxury Client Academy, and it's just that. We are looking for clients who want to work with us and who we want to work with as well. So it is definitely a two-way street, and I'm very upfront about that in my initial discovery call, literally as the first thing talking about how rapport is incredibly important, how working with people where we can have open communication and, disagree in a way that's constructive is all part of that process. And then also mentioning that I'm willing to walk away from an opportunity if it doesn't feel like a good fit. And I find that most people are very appreciative of that because we know these relationships tend to be long term, not only months, but some of the bigger projects are years. And we want to do everything that we can to find a good match, right? And so I have several parts of my qualifying process, and each part shows me a little bit more information, gives me a little bit more data. So it starts with that call, and then I go ahead and mail a box ahead of our in-person meeting. We call that the shock and awe box. I teach you that, how to put your shock and awe box together in the Luxury Client Academy. And this really prepares them for how we would work together, what's important to me as a designer, what I'm looking for, what my boundaries are. All of that is covered in that shock and awe box. And then when we have that on-site meeting after that, it becomes very apparent whether or not we're going to be a good fit. Because if there's things we want to, obviously, if they've read the information we've given to them and they have questions about it, those questions are also very telling as to what we can expect as we move forward in our process. So we do the call, then we do a shock and awe box before our meeting. Then we have an on-site meeting. We walk through the space. This is not a consultation. I know a lot of you will actually do paid consultations. For me, in my business, I look at this as a sales call. So there isn't a consultative part of this process. I'm literally looking at the space. We're discussing the scope of the project. I'm gathering facts. And I'm also, again, really observing the client in their natural habitat. How do they talk to each other if they're married? What kind of little side glances are happening? How much in alignment are they with what they want to accomplish in this project? And a lot of this shows up in the on-site meeting. And then after that, we follow it up with a design agreement. So that's 4 touches. And each time you learn a little bit more about them. Now, maybe this seems super labor intensive to you, but let me ask you, have you ever signed a client and then regretted it a few weeks in after that, high of getting that lovely deposit wears off and you're thinking to yourself, why did I take this client? Yes, we've all been there. So the more we can qualify them, the more we can observe what they're saying, how they're saying it, it can still be a relatively quick process. I can do it within, 5 days and sign a client within 5 days. So it can also be very quick. But having multiple touches with them becomes really important in qualifying. And it just gives you a lot of information so that you can eventually sign 5- and 6-figure design fees. So let's talk about a green flag client. Like, what does that mean? It isn't a client that just sort of pays the invoice, which of course we love that when invoices are paid very quickly, when they're on top of it. But it's more than that, right? It's that they respect your process. They're trusting your expertise. And that whole experience is better for both of you. If you think back on one of your very, best clients, someone that you just loved working with, was a favorite of yours, go back and think about how you approached that project. I bet that you poured your heart and soul into it. You loved almost every minute of it. You felt that you gave them just the very, very best creative ideas. And that's why great clients are great. When they're more difficult, you just kind of drag your feet, you procrastinate, you think about, how can I get through this? How can I get this done? How can I just, be over with this project? It's a different mindset. It really is. As much as, we are overachievers as designers, And we do. Our B work is A plus work everywhere else, but it's just a different vibe when you have a client that you just adore, that you feel is a partner in this process, that you feel like you can talk about ideas where you could say something like, this might sound a little crazy, but I had this thought, and you throw out your most creative ideas and you feel really good about it. There's just a different vibe. So just this process of looking through and finding those green flag clients is incredibly important in your business. So think of it when a client says, we know this is your expertise. We're hiring you because we want your professional thoughts. Green flag. It's a green flag, right? I had a client who was awesome to work with, and I thought, what did they do during the process that was different? This was many years ago, but this is when I started to sort of the light bulb moment. I was like, what did they do that was different? What did they say? How did they react? What was that process? And then how can I figure out how to clone this type of client? And from that process and those thoughts, I refined a lot of the questions and the process that I do up front before I rush into a project or send them a design proposal. I want to get to know them pretty quickly, and it makes a huge difference. So there's a ton of questions that I ask in my quick discovery call. My discovery calls are really pretty quick. They're like 15 minutes or so. We don't spend hours on the phone because I can tell very, very quickly whether or not they're worth going to the next step. That's so incredibly important. It's not whether or not that we're going to work together. It's whether or not they're worth going to the next step in the qualifying process. And again, that's called the client audition. And it is incredibly telling as you put someone through that process. So we're going to go over a couple items that I think are strong green flags. And I want you to be thinking about how you can incorporate this in your business. So the first one is that they really trust your expertise early on in the process. So something they may say, and I find this is key. Would you be interested in this project? Even on that initial 15-minute call, when we talk about, the big things, obviously where the project's located, what are they, what's that scope, overall scope of the project? For me, style is really important because I only work in a certain style. That's something that works for me. And then the other, as we go through that, they'll be like, is this something you would be interested in? Wow. As soon as a client says that to me, green flag. Like I'm already like, yep, we are moving to the next step. So when they say, are you interested in this project? It's a sign of respect. It shows that they care about your input, not just what your availability is. Now, another piece of this, which is, again, kind of comes back to why they trust your expertise very early on, is if they were a referral from a trusted vendor or a great past client. We love that. You know how I feel about referrals. Of course, I think the very best referrals are from trusted vendors because the client is just, there's so many great things about it. And I have a couple podcasts on that episodes as well. But when a trusted vendor is referring someone to you, that is an incredible opportunity because, they already know a lot of things about this process, what things are going to cost. And they've already, brought in a trusted vendor, which means they're ready to go, right? So if they're a referral from a trusted vendor or great past client, also huge green flag. And when they say, is this the kind of project you'd enjoy working on? Check that box. Like that's a big big, big green check. Second thing is there is about budget. If they're open and or clear about their budget, if they talk about the budget early on, it may not be in the very initial call. I don't always ask this question, or actually I don't ask this question in the first call. I let this develop over time because I have this saying that we want them to fall in love with you first. Sometimes clients don't know what they don't know. They may be great clients. They may be open on the budget discussion. They just don't know. They may be bringing up a number from a project that they did 20 years ago and then just sort of adding a little bit extra because, times have changed, but they're still not in the realm that we need. So to me, if they're open to discussing their budget, what's realistic and what can be done, that's a huge green flag. Now you have to be open to working with them to find something that works for them and for you. A lot of times, like I mentioned, clients don't really understand what things cost necessarily. And obviously right now it's a fluid with tariffs and pricing and things. It's a fluid change when it comes to, products and things like that. But if they're open to talking about it, and then on the other side, you're open to discussing how you can meet them in some way, then I think that that's an incredible green flag. So if a client says we're planning for $150,000 for this renovation, does that feel like a good number for what we're describing? So what it does is it shows transparency, it shows realism. Now you have to be okay with also telling them that you might need to get a bit deeper into it before you can answer that question. A lot of times I'll use the analogy, well, I don't know at this time because right now we know we're buying a car, but we're not sure if we're buying a Toyota or a Bentley. And we need to get further into the process. I need to get to know you a little bit better before I can properly answer that question. And usually when I give that analogy, everyone's like, I totally understand. I mean, it's almost like it's too soon to figure that out. And as you go through those discussions about budget, they get to know you better. They kind of understand the new landscape of what's happening in either straight decorating or renovation or new builds, like what's happening budget wise, and if that number is realistic and what can happen for that. Then you start to have those finer tuned discussions about what can you do for that number, or are we going to adjust that number? So keep in mind, almost every client says they want something nice but not too extravagant. Even the clients that I deal with, which are the 1%ers who are super wealthy, they say that. So just keep in mind, just like almost every client says they want something that's light and bright and airy. I think I can't tell you how many times somebody's told me that. It doesn't really mean anything because we don't know what that means to them. So our goal and the trick is to figure out what that means to them. Something nice, but not too extravagant. That could mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So we have to keep those conversations moving so we can dial in exactly what that is. Third green flag is they are respectful of your process. So they're listening carefully when you explain what the next steps are and how you work. They don't try to rush things. If you they say something like, well, I have a big party next month, and you're just like, that's not possible for me with the schedule that I currently have. That's when we have to speak up. So as designers, I know that you want to be nice and you never want to turn away business and you never want to tell somebody no. But this is the time where you also have to be realistic. If somebody calls you and says, I have a big party next month and these are all the things I want to do, and you're thinking to yourself, there's just no way. There's just no way I can do that. You have to literally be okay with saying to them, I understand what your parameters are, and that's not something that I can fit into my schedule. Is there an option for you to, have part of this thing done, or, pushing this off till after the party? And having that open discussion in the beginning when you're not already hired by them really, really makes a difference. So when clients, I'm going to go back to when people ask to try to get free advice. Clients are going to always ask for free advice. I mean, that's just their nature, because they're excited and they want to get some ideas on the spot. But I always respond with how almost any detail can be worked out with some creativity, based on the years of experience that I have. But what I'm there to do, while we're together, is to see the actual space, to talk a little bit more about the project, and the ideas and the options all come out in the next phase of the process after, getting hired, which, as designers, we would call the programming phase. I don't know if I would necessarily use those jargony words with clients, but we talk about it as the design inspiration phase, where we start to gather ideas and then cull through the ideas and refine the ideas. So one way to deflect that is to say, oh, we can definitely talk about different options. I already have some ideas, but I want to reserve judgment until we can get through this process, and then really sit down and go through our questions in more detail and all of that. So most people are totally fine with that. So you don't have to do a consultation as your first on-site meeting. You can also treat it truly as just a sales call where you're walking the space and gathering the information. I will also give them a very high level view of the process moving forward, that, there's a call, then there's a meeting, then there's a design agreement, and we kind of just do the overall high level part of the process. People love to know what to expect and when to expect it. So if you want to sort of head some things off at the pass in your business, maybe you've had some pushback where people are like, I don't know what's going on, or I always like to contact clients before they contact me. That's the one thing in my mind. I'm like, let me anticipate what their next question's going to be. And I'm always thinking one step ahead. So if you can communicate after you even meet with someone, it's going to be, you're going to receive a design proposal by this date, or the next step is, I will get back to you by Thursday. That's all they really want to know. Then they're not going to bother you and stress you out, because you're setting the expectation of when they're going to get the next thing from you. So, for example, after explaining that we start with, that we have the call and the meeting and then the flat fee design agreement, they say something like, oh, that makes total sense. I appreciate how clear you've been about the scope and what's to be expected next. This is great. They're like, yes, they're giving me the information, and you're loving this because you're thinking to yourself, this is somebody who understands that this is a process and that there's several layers to that process. So if somebody says, what about your fees? I approach that question with the answer that, in my business, I provide flat fees because I feel that, and I actually say this to the client, I feel that people appreciate knowing what the design phase part is going to cost. That doesn't include implementation, obviously, but that's for the design ideas and putting the information together. And I find that most people are very appreciative of knowing what that part is going to cost. but it doesn't mean that you have to give them a number. I always tell them that we're in fact-finding mode. We're gathering information. You also need to find out, even though, I always tell my coaching clients to have a range of numbers in their head in terms of their fees, because it really helps them be a lot more confident and get through that design proposal phase so much faster, because we can't just recreate the wheel or build a piano every time we meet a client. Like, we have to keep things moving and have those parameters. But you're still in fact-finding mode, because I had this situation come up with a coaching client the other day where a builder came in and she talked to him and she gave him a number, and he was like, he said, well, this is a great conversation. She was very happy about this. He's like, oh, we're going to have to pay you more than that. And interestingly, as we talked it through more and more, we realized that what she originally thought was the scope of the project was much more expansive than originally thought. There was not only interior details, but there were also exterior details and a lot of other things going on, and that adjusted her number. So when clients very early on are asking you, how much is this going to cost, or what's your design fee, I would push them off, because I want you to go through these 4 phases of qualifying a client to understand a multiple or a multitude of things. Not only the timing, what their ideas are about budget, but what the scope is. You're going to learn through this process, like, how quickly do they make decisions? It's going to become very clear how they interact with each other, how often you think you're going to get questions, how much detail they're going to require from you. Some clients are like, just send it to me. I've had a couple clients, which is in recent years, which is lovely. You send them the whole thing and they're like, yep. Or they'll say, I like everything except this one thing, change it. Those are awesome. Those are great clients. But they're not the norm. So we have to be, protecting ourselves and letting the qualifying process play itself out, which will take a little bit longer up front, but will pay huge, huge dividends in the end. So I want you to be thinking about that. So again, you don't always need to quote a price. Just say we're still in fact-finding mode. We, put together a customized design proposal for you, even though you already know in your head a general range of where your fees are going to end up based on this size and this scope. But we don't have to tell our clients that, because there's a range in there. And when you give someone a range, their clients always go to the low range, the low end of the spectrum, and designers always want to go to the high end of the spectrum. So let's give ourselves a little grace and a little wiggle room there. But respectful of your process, huge green flag. All right, number 4 is they communicate well. So they respond to emails. They answer any, preliminary questions. They put the date on their calendar. They pay the invoice right away. Like, if you're offering a consultation, like, quickness is, money loves speed, right? You've heard me say this before. When they do things quick, it means that it's top of mind. They're ready to go. They're motivated to move forward. These things are good pieces of information to be paying attention to. So, for example, the client who reviews your proposal and comes to the meeting with great questions, instead of saying, oh, I didn't get around to looking at it. How many times have we done that? Where we've either emailed a proposal and then called them to talk about it, or you've gone in person and they're like, oh, I haven't looked at it yet. That's not a good sign. Or how about clients who are doing like 3 other things while you're on a discovery call about their project? you've set this time to have this very brief call that's maybe 15 minutes or 20 minutes just to see if the next step is what you're going to move them to. And, there's screaming kids in the background. You hear them clicking on their computer. They're talking to someone else in the room at the same time. It's just chaos. Or they're running through an airport. The thing is that we need them to give us those 15 minutes, which isn't a lot, to talk about this very important first step in the process. So then rather than gutting through a call like that, because I know so many of you, again, would be like, I feel really bad because I finally got them on the phone and I know they're really busy. You have to think about, what is this telling you? And maybe it's a one-off situation. Maybe it couldn't be avoided. So what I would suggest is, rather than trying to get through that call, which honestly, I don't think you're really going to get the information that you need to move them to the next step or not, I would reset and say, it sounds like you have a lot going on right now. Why don't we reschedule this call for another time when things are quieter and we can really chat, because this is a really important first step in the process. So I want you to be thinking about that the next time you have this kind of call with someone and they're frazzled or frantic or doing 6 other things or didn't read the information that you sent to them. I know that's happened a lot. Just say, hey, that's great, but I really need you to do that before we can, really talk intelligently about what these services are and how I can help you. So I would suggest that you do that as well. But when they communicate well and do it very quickly and efficiently, green flag. Okay, next one is when they are decision ready. So they have some kind of clarity about timing and budget and expectations, or they ask your opinion about something and they are deferring to you as the professional. They're not endlessly hemming and hawing like everything you present to them in that beginning. I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm going to need a few weeks to think about it. Now, some of you are extremely patient, and I have been told that I am patient as well. But when a client can't make a decision, and you know how many decisions there are to make when you're designing a project, it can drive you mad. I know it drives me mad. So you have to be thinking about this and understanding the type of relationship you're going to have with a client who does these things in this qualifying process. Again, if you decide to move forward, if you decide to send a design proposal, then I would say that this client would be at the top end of your price range, because they're going to require a lot more time, a lot more explaining, a lot more options, things like that. So these are great things to be picking up on. So when they're decision ready, maybe they say on the call, we'd like this completed by the holidays. We have a clear idea of what we want, but we need your guidance to bring it together. Then, they have a pretty good idea of what they want. And here's where you can guide them on what is or is not possible and what compromises can be made to meet that deadline or not. It's great when clients have an idea of when they want something to be completed. Again, they don't always know what they don't know. So their ideas of what they think is realistic may or may not be the case for the type of design business that you're running. If you have a client that calls you and says, I want this done in a month, and everything you order is custom, then they're not going to be a good fit for you, because you're not going to be able to meet those expectations. Now, you can flip that and say, the way that I work in my own business is everything is ordered custom. They typically have a 4-month lead time. Is that something that you would be open to, where we would push this deadline. Again, these are the conversations that are worth having up front, and they don't have to feel uncomfortable like you're disappointing them, but I want you to think more like these are the facts. This is how I run my business, and deviating from the way that I run my business will cause lots of things to go into chaos, right? It's going to cause you a lot of stress. You're going to have to figure out new ways to deal with things that you've never done before because you've now gone outside of your process. It's going to cost you emotional energy. It's going to cost you money. Now, if you're set up where you have a couple different scenarios where you're like, I order custom for certain clients, and then in your situation, I would order items that are off the floor of a showroom or readily available or at a retail showroom. That's all well and good. But if you don't know any of this up front, then you can't price it accordingly. So you want to be, understanding where they're coming from. So just remember, it's okay if they tell you something that you're like, that's not possible. But you can say that in your mind. But then as you're talking to them on the phone or in person, you could say, well, here's the challenge with that. We have a couple choices here, or this is how I work, and this would be the compromise. Are you willing to do that? It's up to you. So there's certain reasons that we need to have these multiple touches during our discovery process. Okay. 6th green flag is that they respect your boundaries. What? They ask like really great questions. Again, a lot of people haven't ever hired a designer before, or maybe they have hired a designer before, but they've done it differently. So it's good to see where they're coming from. So if they're asking really great questions, just give them really great answers to those questions, and then just answer them honestly. They respect your business hours, communication preferences. We all kind of chuckle at this. So for instance, if you get an email that says, hey, I know you're wrapping up your day. I'm sending this to you for review tomorrow whenever you're back at your desk. That's saying, hey, I'm sending this. I know it's outside of your office hours. Just when you're back, it's fine. It's good. We're all good. So not the client who's texting you and then calling you and then emailing you all within several minutes of each other in the hopes to either, like push you to call them back or stress you out, or they just can't take it down a notch. I don't know. But if you have clients that are doing that, we want to figure out how to move them out and get new ones that don't do that, right? So keep in mind also that people today will send messages, emails and texts at all hours of the day and night. They will do that. And as many times as you put it in your welcome packet, in your FAQs, and you remind them, they may or may not listen. And that's because they're just humans. And more than likely, they are doing that because it's on their mind at the time and they want this item off their list. Whatever their thought is, whatever their question is, they just want to, we call it like hot potato. They just want it out of their hands and into your hands so that you can take care of it, answer it, follow up with it, whatever. Here's the rub. Here's the thing. Here's the lining. Here's the golden moment. It's up to you to hold your boundary and not respond until it's appropriate, until, the time that you said you were going to respond. So for instance, this past weekend, I think I got a couple emails from a client asking a question, and I was like, I see it, but I'm not answering it until Monday. And they can send the email all they want, but I'm not answering it. And I answered it on Monday, and the response came back on Monday, and everything was fine. They weren't upset. I wasn't upset. It's just, we have to be more like it is. This is the way we do it. This is the way we roll. And yes, clients are going to send emails. Clients are going to send texts. Let them. You know the Mel Robbins let them theory? Let them do what they need to do. But let me, that's also part of the let them theory, right? Let me decide how I'm going to respond to that. And you dropping your own boundary to respond to that is telling them that they're going to get a response from you on off hours. So we have to be responsible for our own boundary. We have to keep it. So, hey, I want to let you also know, I don't know if you guys know this, but Google has this service called Google Messages for Web. And so it can bring your text messages into your computer. I have it set up on my computer. So if you get text messages from clients like with details and things that you're just like, email it to me or whatever. And of course they don't, because they don't know what they're sending you, where they're sending. I have clients that are like, it's from an iPad, it's from a phone, it's on the computer. Like they don't even understand or know where messages are originating from. They just send them. And sometimes we get them email and text message, which is kind of hilarious. But if you have Google Messages for Web, you can pull in your text messages on your computer, and then you can copy and paste all that information and put it in the file, the project management software. Obviously, you can have a separate, record of these conversations, which of course we always want to have a record of conversations, and it's difficult when we have that in text. So wanted to let you guys know about that service. I use it myself in my own business, and I absolutely love it. All right, 7th green flag. They understand the value and they're willing to invest in their home. So they're not price shopping or looking for the cheapest option. You have had clients I know call you and say, do you give me your discount? Or we're talking to 9 different designers, or we're really tight on budget. You guys have heard the meme going around of the We Do Not Care Club, right? And we have a designer edition that's floating around right now amongst the group that I am coaching. And we do not care. We do not care that you have overbought on your house and now have no money to properly furnish it, but still want this to be my problem. We do not care, right? So you have to, again, it's better to address these issues up front instead of being like, oh yeah, we can try to figure something out. You have to be like, I'm not sure that that's a realistic budget. We can look at it in a little more depth, but I will get back to you as to what I think is appropriate. So we have to be setting up these expectations up front. Again, same with the discount. We resell all the products that you select from us, and we give you an all-in number. This is how I do it in my business. It's white glove service. It's white glove delivery. It's an all-in number so that you don't have to worry about anything else. And that's how we handle it in our business. And you have to practice this. What's your answer going to be when somebody says, do you pass along your discount? Or how much do you discount? Again, we do a lot of this role play in the Luxury Client Academy, but you have to figure out ahead of time, what do you want your answer to be? And once you figure that out ahead of time, when you get asked this, which of course you will at some point, if you haven't been asked, you will be asked. You've already figured out what your answer is going to be. You're not answering this off the cuff when you're, kind of flustered or shocked that someone's actually asked you this question. You already have it figured out. You know what you're going to say. You know what your answer is. You've vetted your answer. Come up with your answer and then test it out on your friends or your family or a colleague or whatever, and let them poke some holes in it and then figure out what that next answer is. Trust me, your confidence is going to go through the roof because you're going to be like, yep, I already figured this out. I already know how I'm going to answer this. Totally cool with my answer. Feel very confident. and comfortable with what my answer is here. And if they don't like that answer, or they don't want to work that way, this tells us exactly what we need to know. This is part of the qualifying process. It's like, not a good fit. It's okay, not a good fit. Move on to another person who's willing to do these things for you. I had a coaching client who was talking to a builder, and the builder said, we got a price from another designer to do this work, but we really want to work with you. It's incredible what people will tell you. And so she got this number, and I don't know, the other designer was going to do an incredible amount of work for like $1,500. And my coaching client comes to me and says, I couldn't possibly do this work for $1,500. Like, this is crazy. And the interesting thing was, as we talked through about what she would charge, how she would handle it, all the services that she would provide, the quality, the level of detail, just everything. I mean, she was a lot more. I think she was $6,000. And she really had a hard time. She felt bad. How many times do we feel bad? She felt bad for the builder because she was like, this number is going to be so much more than they're expecting. We do not care because we know how much time and effort's involved. You took a project that you were going to charge $6,000 for and you did it for $1,500. You're not making any money. And then you're upset because you're on a project forever doing an incredible amount of work and not making any money, and then not able to get any other projects because you're busy doing this one. Do you see how that can cause problems moving forward? So this is what she did. She felt terrible. She sent off her $6,000 design fee. And guess what? She got the job. She got the job. She was, what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4 times higher. Her fee was 4 times higher than the other person. And she got the job. And she was really happy about it, but she was shocked. She was surprised. So I want you guys to be thinking, I don't want you to keep feeling bad about charging people what you think you should be charging, because that just tells me that you're not confident in what you're selling, what your fee should be. You need to be able to defend it. So again, run through an idea of when somebody asks you some crazy ass question about, are you going to give me your discount or pass things through a cost? It's hilarious. What's your answer going to be to that? And practice it. And then the next time you get asked, you're not shocked or surprised. You're just like, okay, here's how I work. This is why I do it this way. And, you're kind of like, either you're on board or you're not board. All part of the qualifying process. So when someone understands your value and is willing to invest, and this is why there's 4 parts of the qualifying process, is they get to know. Sometimes they just don't even know, because either they've not done a project like this, they've done it somewhere else in a totally different market. There's so many reasons why. And if you come across as confident and understanding your own process and being comfortable with that, you're going to know right away if they're a good fit or not. And if they're not a good fit, that's okay, because it's going to open you up to get another opportunity that's even better. And, we work on this a lot in the Luxury Client Academy because there's so much concern about getting projects and getting great projects that turning jobs down just seems really scary. Because before we worked together, a lot of designers are like, but I don't know when another one's coming. Now I have designers that are like, turned it down, so happy. I feel so empowered. I can't wait to get that project that's an incredible fit, because I know I'm doing the work to bring more opportunities to my door. So I'm not worried about that. When you're not worried about opportunities, the phone ringing, you have the confidence to be able to turn down clients that aren't good fits. So that is the one thing I think is an incredible transformation with the designers that I work with, is that they are confidently understanding where their value is. They understand when clients don't see it, that it's okay to turn those jobs down. And then they're also confident that more opportunities are coming. So when they understand your value and they're willing to invest, green flag, green flag. So for example, if a client says, I wanted this done right, I want to do this the right way, I'm hiring you because I know it saves me time and saves me headaches. That's a green flag. We want that. All right, number 8, if you feel energized after interacting with them, your gut is part of this too. And as much as that might sound woo-woo, when you get off a call with somebody, you're like, ooh, this is going to be good. Like, we're feeling the vibe, right? So after that call, you feel energized, excited, you feel really aligned, and you're not drained or anxious or uneasy. After a call that I had recently, I remember hanging up and thinking, wow, that's fun. They really get it. And this is going to be an awesome creative partnership moving forward. So you have to use your gut as part of this process. Again, during those 4 different phases, you're going to find out more information. You're going to have more interactions. You're going to feel different things as you get to know them a little bit more. And don't forget to trust that gut. So use your discovery call as the green flag filter. So you're going to help decide if they're a good fit for you. Don't forget, client audition. They're auditioning to be in your world, right? So this isn't a free design session, but they are auditioning. It's a fact-finding mission. You are pre-qualifying during your process. This is just one piece of the process, but you're going to be doing a bunch of pre-qualifying over a short period of time. You're going to be checking for timing, budget, scope, decision readiness. These are things that are all going to come up during your discovery call. A couple good questions that you could ask during your call if you're not doing this currently. What prompted you to do this project now? So this is great because you're going to learn if this is something that's been on the books for a couple years. Maybe they started and stopped it. Maybe they interviewed a couple people. Maybe they fired somebody. These are great questions to ask. So what prompted you to call me about this project right now? So it's going to tell you a lot. And then the other thing is to just ask the question and then just listen. Just listen to their answer. Let them go on as long as they want. One thing, have you worked with a designer before? I know a lot of you guys ask this question, but it stops there. Yes or no. Yes, we've worked with one. No, we haven't. But the secondary follow-up question should be, how was that experience? And from there, you're going to learn things that they loved, things that they didn't love, how they worked with that designer, whether or not that's in alignment with how you worked. I had a client tell me that they've worked with designer before. Always great. It's good news. But then she proceeded to tell me that the designer passed everything through at cost. They gave her just a flat fee. She did a lot of sort of like knockoff items, which I thought was another one. I was like, yeah, I don't think so. We're not doing that. So it's great to find out if they've worked with a designer before. How was that experience? Tell me a little bit about that. What did you like the most about it? What was something that you didn't particularly like? And they're going to give you a lot of information, and that's going to help you not only like craft your message as you move forward, if you decide to move forward with this person, to understand where they're coming from, but you also understand where they're coming from, what their past experience is, how that could shape how they work with you moving forward. The other thing is, do you have a timeline or budget range in mind? Of course, you want to ask these questions so that you can see where their heads are at. You can always, and I encourage you that if a timeline or budget item comes up that seems really out of whack, just for, the overall big picture that you're hearing about this project, this is the time to bring it up. Hey, I'm a little concerned about this because on average things are costing, kitchens are costing $100,000 and above, and they tell you they've got $20,000 to do a kitchen. Let's talk about that a little bit. Are you going to be, are you going to be replacing the appliances? Like, you have to start. It's literally just the first part of the conversation so that you can start to dive into more details so that you can make a great decision. So as we wrap up this episode, I want to remind you that you're not looking to take on every client, that you're looking to find clients that are in alignment, that are a really good fit for you, and have those expectations clearly set ahead of time, and that qualifying a client is a process, just like design is a process. Qualifying a client is a process as well. And when you look for these green flags, you're actually putting yourself in a position for an easier design process, better workflow, more profitability, and more joy in your business. We all know that this is a crazy business, and it's even harder when you work with difficult clients. So anywhere that we can bring more joy to that and look for those green flags, then we should be doing it. So I want to train you to start looking for these signs early on and start with your very first discovery call. So I want to challenge you this week to start writing down your personal top 5 green flags, things that you have remembered from past clients that were incredible, words they've said, things they've done, how they handled certain parts of that process. Write down your top 5 green flags. And then start customizing that based on what makes an ideal client for you, an ideal client for your business. And I hope that this helps you tighten up that process so that as you sign clients, they become awesome and more wonderful and more fulfilling and a pleasure and a joy to work with moving forward. And of course, profitable as well. Now, if you want to share a great question, or even if you have additional questions for me about this process, go ahead and find me on Instagram. It's at Pamela Durkin. And let me know if you have a question that you're like, this question never fails me. I always know this is going to be a great client. Or if you're like, I have a couple questions about how I could do this better in my business, shoot me a DM over there in Instagram at Pamela Durkin, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. Thanks so much for hanging in with me today. I hope you guys start to see those green flags everywhere, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.